You're listening to the Lynchburg Hornets Sports Podcast, a podcast about Lynchburg sports. Okay, the Lynchburg Hornets Sports Podcast, a podcast about Lynchburg sports, rolls on. Once again, I'm your host, Tim LaDuca. We're going to try to get through this intro as fast as possible, kind of in honor of one of our guests today, Coach Jake Reed with cross country and track and field. You know, just speed's the name of the game. But it's pretty timely that we are releasing this podcast today because in a couple of days, on Friday, March 8th and 9th, the Lynchburg men's and women's indoor track and field teams will be sending a handful of individuals to the national championships in Virginia Beach. That includes Anaya Seward and Betsy Monkern in the 60-meter hurdles, Kayla Werner in the 3K, Allison Dell in the 5K. On the men's side, Sam Laneza in the 800-meter, Frank Sorba and Chasen Hunt will be in the 3K. And then, of course, the men's DMR distance medley relay, one of the top times in the country a couple weeks ago in Boston. They are going to be competing for a national championship in that event as well on the men's side. But then after we talk to Coach Reed, we're going to talk with Piercen Young, a junior on the men's, or I guess going to be a junior. He's currently a sophomore, but he finished his sophomore season. Piercen Young on the Lynchburg men's basketball team. We talked to him, and we talked to Coach Reed about training and how getting yourself in the best shape possible to compete at the highest level for your sport. Okay, let's check the stats on this. Under 2 minutes, that's pretty good. Sounds like a good 800-meter time. Under 2 minutes. Let's see if we can. We're gonna stop this one right at 1:50 when I stop talking. Hopefully, that's how fast Sam Laneza can run this weekend. Okay, we're here with Jake Reed, the head cross-country coach, the assistant track and field coach, really specializing in the distance realm, you know, throughout the entire season. So, Jake, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you, Tim?
Good. I'm really excited to sit down with you. Today we're focusing on training and things not on meet day. But I first wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit more and let our audience know about you. You went to Liberty, but tell us about, you know, why are you in the track and distance world? What brought you into that sport?
For sure. So I ran cross-country and track at Liberty University. My wife and I both did. We're here in Lynchburg. We got 5 kids together now. But she really got me started in the sport with coaching. I had the opportunity to kind of work with her senior year when I was out of eligibility, and she was a 10K athlete. And she was kind of the first guinea pig to how's this going to work? What do I know? How can I implement things? We had a lot of fun doing it together. She ended up qualifying for regionals that year, was an honorable mention All-American in the 10K, and improved drastically. And she was like, you have to coach and you have to do this. So she really pushed me to pursue it. I've had a homeschool high school program for about 11 years now. And that was kind of that pathway. And then when Spreck called, it was a no-brainer to take it to the collegiate level.
And how did you get to know Spreck? James Sprecher is the director of men's and women's cross-country, track and field here at Lynchburg. But how did you get to know him?
Ironically, I ran for him at UNC Wilmington for about a year and a half before I transferred to Liberty University. That's where I got my collegiate start as an athlete. And running for him, I had a distance coach that was his longtime assistant, Coach Swear, who kind of really taught me the ins and outs. I know we're going to talk about training today, and that's where the groundwork started. I owe a lot to him, not even just the knowledge behind it, but the inspiration, to do what I do. And, kept in touch with him, and probably more him than Spreck. And then he was the one that reached out and was like, hey, Spreck's looking for someone as a distance coach. And I know you've lived in the area before, and we connected. And, I always had a great respect for Spreck, and I love coaching with him, and it's just kind of been a perfect fit.
Sweet. So before we get into exactly what makes your distance athletes so great in the training. I just want to talk about, your last almost a decade here with Lynchburg has been really historical and unprecedented on our campus. When you first got here, were the immediate goals, we're going to bring this team to a national level? What was your kind of time frame in getting to this level?
For sure. I remember sitting down with Coach Spreck and just kind of showing him my framework because I had coached, my high school team, and just showing him what I knew. And we kind of put our heads together to, I grew a lot. I didn't know a lot when I started. Mm-hmm. I kind of leaned on him for some of the strength and conditioning side of things. I didn't know a whole lot about lifting. I didn't know, the ins and outs of sequencing of training like I do now. And I leaned on him for the things I didn't know, and then kind of brought to the table what I was good at. And I think in unison, when I started, that really helped to get us going. But if you would have told me like we are where we are now, I don't know if I would have believed you then. I also thought, personally, just to be transparent and honest, I thought it was going to be this stepping stone type thing.
Okay.
I thought I was going to get in here, learn some stuff. This would be the start of a coaching career, and then it'll be on to bigger and better things. And I got in here, and Coach Spreck really taught me the ins and outs of what collegiate coaching is, what opportunities look like, what are you looking for, how is this going to evolve. And I realized, man, our sport doesn't know division. You can make it as good as you want it to be. Mm-hmm. What are you truly passionate about coaching? And when I dug into that, I really realized that, like, I love Lynchburg. I love being here. We can make this thing special. This is not just a start of something bigger down the road. This can be the big thing. And after a couple years, I kind of realized that, and I was like, I'd love to make this place home. I would love to make this program an elite, program, a national level program, and I could kind of see that. And I would say second, third year, when we started walking towards that, I was like, this can be special.
So that reminds me of something that Travis Beasley, the head baseball coach, said is he was ready at a certain point of his career to focus more on his own career goals. And he knew it wasn't D1 professional baseball or whatever it was. He knew he wanted to be a head coach somewhere. And so Lynchburg was the best place. Same thing with Ed Smith, our strength and conditioning coach. He was once told to make the big time where you are, don't chase the big time. What kind of misconceptions are there about Division III, and why do you think that people can still have amazing careers at the D3 level?
For me, it's autonomy. I think a lot comes from the top down in the community. When I look at like John Waters, our athletic director, he's awesome. He gives us what we need, what we ask for. We're never necessarily told no. It's just like, how are we going to make this work type mentality. Mm-hmm. And it's not, we don't function in silos. We kind of like work together, but in working together, there's complete autonomy for what you want to do. And I think that's special because I think when you get to that Division I level, some things are siloed and you don't have control of certain mm-hmm. settings, certain, situations, certain realms. And when I can have a conversation with my AD every day if I needed to, or the athletic trainer, Caroline's been amazing for us. If I can walk into her office and talk to her daily about all our athletes, those relationships go a long way to helping the athletes, and you have a lot more control to make it what you want it to be, rather being told that it has to be this way, X, Y, and Z. And we talk about that a lot, having conversations with John, just the vision. What do you want it to be? Mm-hmm. And then how do we get it there? And I think when you have that backing and those relationships, it makes a place special because you can do what you want with it.
And then so we'll just go back in time just a little bit to November in, kind of the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. Both of the men's and women's teams qualified for nationals by winning their region, but then they both placed inside the top 10. Can you give me kind of what was going through your head after all the results were settled and we had All-Americans and we had made it to, your teams had made it to that top level?
Yeah, it's always an interesting journey because you always are looking at it and have to frame things. Talk about this a lot with the athletes, like frame your expectations and understand that like things aren't perfect. Grass isn't always greener on the other side. You have highs and lows, and it's keeping those emotions in check. So there's different points in the year where you might think you're the greatest team ever, and it's like, we can win the national title, and then there's times where you're scrapping and you're like, I just want to get there. But this year to me was more of we talk about this year as like a culmination, but I looked at it as the year prior was the year we kind of really made it. The year prior, we were a national level team. We did have the potential to be a top 10, top 15 team, and it was the first time we had been there. And I think sometimes when you're there and you experience it, the second time around is almost harder because the expectation does exist. And the first time around, it was all fun and games. It was all, you go to Michigan and it's freezing cold and you don't do well. Who cares? It's like you made it, and like it's not that you didn't want to do well, but you were already at that pinnacle. And then this year was that expectation. And I thought on that given day, we bared those expectations really well. It wasn't a home run, but when I look across the board and you can say, man, almost everyone out there got base hits. That's hard to do internationally.
Yeah.
It's hard for everyone to be solid. It's hard for everyone to come through and just have a good day. We talk about that all the time. Like, if you can't be great, we got to be good. You can't guarantee you're going to feel awesome. You can't guarantee you're going to have the race of your life. But if you're not going to have the race of your life, you can't get emotional about it. You can't throw tantrums. You can't give up. Like, you got to be there for each other. You got to do it for your team. And you can't let great go to terrible. You got to be able to keep it in check, and I think we did that really well.
Yeah, but the season didn't end there. The cross-country season ended in November, but you were coaching year-round with the distance team in the indoor track and field teams and the outdoor track and field teams. It really never stops for you. So we'll start there. You have so many athletes, and maybe only a certain percentage of them are going to compete on race day. But how are you managing 60, maybe 40 athletes, men's and women's? How are you managing their practice schedules and their training?
Yeah, I mean, it can be challenging. I have amazing assistants, and that's a big part of it. Coach Olivia Watson and Coach Brennan Straits, like, they help me day in and day out. And sometimes logistically, it's not even specifically helping with training, but when they can take stuff off your plate, when they can be huge hands with recruiting, budgeting, planning, all of those things, it allows you to zero in and be good at like what you're good at. And we talk about that a lot. What is your gift? How are you going to use your skill set to better the team? And for me in coaching, when I look at like how do you manage it, we have 54 I think distance athletes right now. A big part of it is helping them grow mentally and emotionally, even more so than physiologically. The physical side of stuff is science. We can talk like the training, I know we will, and that's important. But I got to get them in a place where they're excited about it, where they're living the right lifestyle, where we're on this journey together that they're committed to, and we're doing it the right way. And I think that's where it starts. It's if we can manage the lifestyle and get everyone in a good place, the training will take care of itself. But I think logistically that's the hardest part is, making sure that the athletes' needs are met, making sure that they're taken care of. And that's something we work through all the time, and it's not always, what you see on the outside where it's just result at a championship meet. But sometimes when we start, man, it's messy. Kids go through stuff. There's trials. There's social aspects to it that come into play, the academic stresses, and managing those stresses, really helps us to train at a high level. Because if we can't manage those stresses, we can't train at a high level. We can't adapt, and we can't improve.
So the mental aspect of that is interesting, especially when you consider our basketball team can grab their whole team, put them on a court, and they're looking at all of them. All of 20 guys are right there. You're not really going to always be able to be running the entire time with your distance team, and I see them all over Lynchburg running around. How much are they doing on their own time based compared to what is a regimented practice time?
We're pretty regimented with practice schedules. I like to have eyes on things because I always say 18 to 22-year-olds kids are going to get caught up in their emotions. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to do stuff on the fly that they probably wouldn't want to do if told and given good advice in the moment. So we do try to have someone, it's not always me, but have someone observing them the majority of the time.
Okay.
Obviously, they might do like a shakeout run before a workout on their own or something of that nature. They're very good at managing life, sleep patterns, and like we talk about that a lot. We can manage our realm well, but we can't force you to go to bed. We can't force you to do your homework on time.
Yeah.
So they do a lot of that stuff on their own, but when they're in practice and in that setting, we're very systematic. We always preach like trying to progress at everything we do. When we say progression, we're not talking about progression in time. We're not talking I want to run this time and I want to get better. We're talking, man, I need to increase mobility. I need to increase my strength. I need to increase my speed. I need to increase my aerobic capacity. And they look at all of those things, and we try to be really detailed of like, this is how we're going to do that. And tailor it to them, but also have a system in place that works in unison where everyone can find the commonalities and train together.
So what I've gathered from other coaches, and especially from Ed Smith with strength training, is that a freshman and a senior are obviously going to look a lot different. How individualized are you getting from freshman year to senior year working with different athletes? Maybe that's skill level or something like that, but are you writing player A, B, and C different workouts at some points, or are they all doing the same thing?
There's a framework to it, so that when they come in freshman year, their days of the week, the times that are spent training, all of that stays the same. The theme of the training for each day stays the same. How we accomplish it changes. So, for instance, like their volume of running might increase, to increase aerobic capacity. They might start at 30 miles a week, and then you might see them as senior year, and some kids might run 100, some kids might run 50 to 60, and that's the gamut, looking at their strengths and weaknesses as an athlete. Same thing with strength training. Some athletes, like I'll even take some of our top athletes that people know, like we walk down to the weight room, and what Frank does and what like Sam and Torda do are polar opposites from the naked eye. But when I get down there and I'm talking speed power development, a lot of people don't understand it, but Frank has some of the greatest strength to weight ratio of any athlete on our entire campus. I don't need him to lift for strength. I just need speed power development, and we do a lot of like little plyometric stuff, and I don't need a lot of it because he has a lot of stress with the aerobic side of things. He runs a lot of volume, so I can't add too much of it. But if I can just add a touch with a little plyometric circuit, and I don't waste all my time in the weight room, even though the weight room's great and it's beneficial for a lot of people, for him, I don't know it does that much.
Yeah.
And then I watch Sam and Tor, and they spend an extra hour in there, and we're really working on different facets, and they possess a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses. So their training style looks the same when it comes to that. But then on Tuesday, you'll walk out there and they'll be ripping the workout, all three of them together. So yeah, there's definitely a progression to it. And as they go, what they can handle in training density increases. So, our freshmen, they're a mid-distance that might look like a Sam or Tor in their natural ability, but they're just not as good yet. A lot of the adjustment is density in training, like either the volume increases or the intensity of what we're doing increases, how much weight they're lifting if we're in the weight room. All of those things just gradually increase, and we can kind of progress it like that.
Yeah, so I mean, that seems like very complicated. How long is it taking you to kind of perfect this style, if it even is perfected, or are you still making changes year to year?
You can always learn and grow. I mean, one of my favorite times of the year we just came out of was, break. And over break, we always go to like a coaches convention and connect with different coaches. And a lot of my, really good friends are coaching all over the country. And then, having a week with them to sit down. And a lot of people think it's like sitting down and talking X's and O's. Like, no, I mean, we're just sitting down over dinner, we're hanging out, and we're talking about problems we see. Some of those have to do with training. Some of those have to do with how do we get kids to live correctly? How do we get kids motivated? But I love that, and it's constantly changing. And when you look at training, you always got to be able to provide a new stimulus to adapt. So I can't just do the same thing each and every year and expect the same result. I got to change it up a little bit, and it's going to morph. It's going to shift slightly in what we do. There might be a little bit more emphasis on this season than maybe there was in a year prior. And as it evolves, I feel like we get better and better, and I don't think it'll ever be perfected. I don't think anyone can necessarily perfect it because there's always variables you have to take into account. There's always things that have to get shifted, like this time of the year, weather. What you write down on paper and perfecting the training outline is awesome, and then all of a sudden this afternoon, if it's pouring down rain, like what are we going to do? We're going to have to alter things. So training is meant to not just be written and have on paper this is what you got to do, but you got to be smart to adjust the right ways with the right variables. And I think that's something like we do really well.
So a theme that I've heard from your athletes is you tell them suffer better. Can you tell me a little bit what that means? Is that a thing for race day, or is suffer better more a training aspect of it all?
So suffer better is actually an old Patagonia slogan.
Okay.
And I really got into doing ultra marathons after college. I love endurance feats, and they actually partnered with our running store that sponsored us, and I love this slogan. And I'm a Christian, and it means a lot to me from a faith perspective because it's about finding joy in suffering, and that's a huge aspect of our walk in faith. And I actually just shared with the team, I was reading a book, Steve Magnus, who's a really famous coach, and it's called Passion Paradox. And it's just kind of like finding, like, what is passion? What's it mean? And that even evolved further for me. What's it mean to suffer better when I figured out the root and origin of the word suffer, and it's derived in what passion means. And the root of passion is actually a Greek word called passio, and passio was defined in unison with suffering. It was only used as suffering, and it wasn't a positive term at all as we think of passion today. So when I tell the guys we're going to figure out how to suffer better, we talk about finding joy. Like, how do you find joy when you're running like 8 400s at mile pace with like 2 minutes rest and you're keeled over and you feel like you got to puke? Like, how are you going to do that? And a lot of that is, where's the motivation lie? Where's your desire? Where's your discipline? And what are you thinking about? And that's a big part of it, because distance running, it's not like ball sports. Ball sports, you can use anger and aggression. You can, channel emotion. And us, we have to like live in our thoughts for, if it's a 10K, it could be like 30 minutes out there. And you got to be able to draw like intrinsic motivation. And that's a root word that we really looked at, like suffer better, like that just totally, enwraps and engulfs like what we do. We have to know that. We have to be able to do that. We have to figure out how to find joy in the midst of our own suffering.
Maybe the final question here, but I'm thinking of, as I learn more about track and field, I've been kind of surprised sometimes when I look at results when I'm not present. But I was there a couple weeks ago. We ran at Liberty, and I saw Frank pull off. I'm like, oh no, is he hurt? Talked to some guys. He was just setting a pace. Frank went out and ran one of the best times in Division III history a couple months ago. How has his training changed, knowing that he kind of has a ticket to nationals right now? And was that always the plan for him to do that right out of the gate, or did we get a little lucky that he's sitting pretty for March?
Yeah, it's always hard when you're like cross-country season, you're moving throughout the year. I like to extend the finish line for people per se, where you always have this vision like everyone's going to make it through the season perfectly. Everyone's going to do the December meet. We're going to knock out a qualifier, and that's great in thinking. And I think it helps because athletes aren't as weary going into the national meet. The national meet's not necessarily obviously it means the most, but it doesn't always have to be the ultimate finish line. And they're still thinking towards other things too. And when you extend that finish line, it helps keep the desire and motivation to train. 2 weeks out from nationals, it doesn't become like, oh, this is going to be it's going to be the end of the season. It's more of like, no, we got big fish to fry later. So we kind of had this outline that maybe a lot of people would race in December, but it is hard coming off an emotional high like nationals. And we all talked as a group after, and it ended well, and we were excited, and some people were tired, and we're just like, maybe not. And Frank was gung-ho.
Yeah.
I want to race. And it made sense. It set up perfect for him. And I knew he was capable of doing something in that realm. So it was kind of a plan. It kind of evolved well. But as you had mentioned, like coming back and pacing teammates, it provides us a little bit more freedom with him to help out other people. And also, we always say we got to weather storms. We never know what's going to happen. Like, we don't know where athletes are going to hit a curveball. Like, Frank had a little bit of a nagging issue with a circumstance that happened over winter break where he hurt his knee a little bit. And we didn't have to panic. We didn't have to rush things. We don't have to push through things. We're allowing him to vary training a little bit, make the adjustments we need. I know he's going to be fine by the time we get to nationals. And we didn't have to push, like, we got to race now. We're able to be patient. And I like doing it when it makes sense, but I don't want to force it if we don't have to. So that's where that individualism kind of, like, comes in.
That's great. Well, that's all I really have for you here. Thanks a lot for spending time and breaking down some of the intricacies and nuances of running, because I think sometimes people have misconceptions about it, and it's really interesting to learn more about it, especially when your distance programs are one of the most talented on our campus. So it's good to give them a name and get to know a little bit behind the scenes with them.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. We really appreciate it.
All right. Go Hornets. All right, now we're here with men's basketball sophomore Piercen Young. How are you, Pearson?
I'm good, Tim. Glad to be on. Share my thoughts today.
So, Pearson, first question I got to ask is, you have been, starting on the basketball team since you've got here. Was that the expectation for you when you were recruited, that you wanted to start day one, or did you prove a little bit in the preseason last year?
Yeah, I would say always I have high expectations for myself, and I knew coming into Lynchburg that I had a good chance. I knew they had all starters from the previous year left, and it was going to be a kind of not rebuilding year, but we had a lot of new pieces coming in, a lot of people that weren't used to starting. We're going to have to, take new roles. So I knew I had a good chance, and I had a really good preseason. So I was just hoping for the best, and I thought I earned it and deserved it. So Coach Scott gave me the opportunity.
So you've been really fun to watch. Your position kind of changes game to game, but if you had to say you're a guard or a forward, can you even give an answer to that?
Yeah, it does change a lot. I would probably say I'm a 2, but a 3.
Okay.
Depends on the game, situation, lineup.
All right, so I don't want to, put you in a box and say that this is what you're good at and have had to work at, but it seems like your three-point game has been a really big part of your season here in your sophomore year. Is that something that you've worked on, or is it just kind of your role changes that gets you to have more threes?
Yeah, obviously my freshman year I didn't shoot the ball too well.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the worst percentages in my life, but that's always kind of who I've been. I've been a good shooter, but also just a high IQ player. I've turned around a lot this year. I think I'm shooting 40 from 3 right now. So, yeah, it's kind of been my main stepping stone. I know I need to space the floor, especially with this year's team. We brought in a lot of athletes, a lot of athletic guards, so I know I need to give them the space to operate. So that was kind of the main key this offseason.
So now tell me about, when I think of training and working and getting workouts in the gym, the one sport that gym rat is the term that people use a lot, and basketball players are the first ones that come to mind. How much have you been in charge of your own training compared to what is regimented by Coach Scott?
So off season, especially with D3, a lot of it's kind of yourself. You have to, it's kind of your responsibility and your self motivation to get in there. That's growing up in a basketball family. My dad coached, so he kind of trained me, coached me my whole life. And I grew up with an older sister, ended up playing D1, so I kind of had the stepping stones. But yeah, a lot of it's self-motivation. Just you got to get in there, get your teammates in there with you at this level especially.
So let's take it to last summer. How were you coming up with your workouts in the off season? How much did they change day to day? Where were you getting your inspiration for that?
Yeah, well, after the season, I talked with Coach about the year coming up, what I need to prove on, and a lot of that we knew I needed. My percentages they were gonna go up this year regardless, just because it was a bad year. Just one of those, but we need to continue to get repetitions, just getting as much reps as possible, especially catch and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that has had to be just doing the same things, but getting in the gym as much as possible, just continuing repping what I've been doing.
So catch and shoot, did you have a shooting machine at home or at the gym you go to, or were you working out with someone?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I live 7 minutes from here, so this summer I'd work and then I lift in the morning, go to work, and then I come back to school almost every day and just get on the gun or call my dad, get post moves, mid-range, just, yeah.
I hear some crazy stories about how many shots people are getting up a day. At your peak, how many shots are you putting up a day?
Yeah, a lot of those, you'll hear Kobe saying he got a 1,500 a day. Like, a lot of that's fabrication. They're dragging a little bit. But, I mean, I try to get up at least 200 makes every day. Obviously, it's harder in the season with practices and lifts, just games almost every other day. So, but especially off season, 200, 300 makes a day, depending on what I'm focused on that day. But in season, I like to get at least 700, 800 a week, made threes or mid ranges. So that's my goal specifically.
So then pickup, or how often are you running the floor during the off season?
Yeah. Well, this summer I was actually in like a men's league up in Charlottesville, so I had that every Sunday. And then typically I'd play once in between that with just some other guys or some people in town. But it's usually twice a week, but especially this summer, I really focus on getting reps and then just playing in the men's league, playing with older people, just makes you stronger in physicality.
Anyone that it was kind of cool stepping on the court with during the off season, maybe in that men's league, that was a pretty cool story?
Yeah, luckily I've played with a lot of really good people playing up in high school. My league, it wasn't rare to play against 41 guys on the opposite team. So I have a lot of friends that have good experience with that. So, yeah, I mean, this summer I played against people playing in Syracuse right now, like Justin Taylor and stuff. So,
wow,
just playing against good talent like that, I mean, it makes you better. Iron sharpens iron.
So now tell me a little bit away from basketball. What kind of training is important to you coming from Ed Smith in the weight room or running? And then what do you like to work on to help your game other than playing basketball?
Yeah, the physicality part, especially with my game, it's a big part of my game with rebounding. So this summer I talked to Coach Smith a lot about how I can maintain my strength, because a lot of time coming in the season I felt really strong, but then throughout the season your body kind of, you're not able to get into the weight room as much, and then you kind of lose some strength or your body starts to break down a little bit. So just talk to him about how do I keep up with that, and just mostly just 2-3 times a week, make sure you get in the weight room, stretching, yoga, and then I did get into creatine this summer, so just staying with that and make sure you take it every day.
So keeping up with that, I feel like you're burning a lot of calories when you're playing in the games for one, but practicing every day. What's the diet like to help try to maintain some weight?
Just gotta eat. I wouldn't say, I'm pretty picky, so there's a lot of, I kind of eat the same things over and over again, but yeah, I mean, I'm in the calf at least 4 times a day.
Okay.
I think if you ask the dining hall ladies, me and my roommates, Jason Easton and Trey Gillenwater, we're number one in there. We're in there at least 4 times a day, so just continuing to eat and eating the right things is necessity.
So if you're a picky eater, what's your favorite food?
Any meat, so steak. I love pizza though, but steak, chicken, rice. I mean, I love breakfast, so like eggs, waffles, pancakes. I'm a big breakfast guy, so I'll eat that for dinner too.
If you're a picky eater, what's some kind of, I guess, normal food that you're never going to touch?
If I go vegetables, it's almost always going to be green beans. So I'll have green beans. I try it at least for dinner, but I'm not a big green guy, which is kind of bad. But I love fruit, just vegetables for some reason, man. Since I've been a little kid, my mom's never been able to get me into it.
Sorry, I mean, you're still one of the stronger guys on the team, physical part of your game. One more funny question, kind of, before we get back into it. Miles Taylor on Lynchburg Reels said that you're the hardest to play against in practice because you foul a lot. You want to say something about that?
Well, love Miles, but I don't really know what he meant by foul on offense, because typically you do it on defense. But I'll give kudos to him. I would say he's probably the hardest to guard too.
Okay.
Because he's 6'5", 210, strong, athletic. But Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier, you just drive 7 minutes in the summer to come play here. I'm familiar that you went to VES, which is local. We got Lynchburg on your roster. Did you grow up here in Lynchburg?
Yeah, so I grew up in Forest.
Okay.
I went to Brookville all my life. My mom still works over there, and my dad's in Campbell County, as a principal. So I grew up in Forest, but went to Brookville, and then my sophomore year I transferred over to VES, and we moved over to in Boonesboro.
Mm-hmm.
So Lynchburg or Forest area my whole life.
So being from the area, Coach Hillary Scott has been coaching here just about your entire life. What did you know about the Lynchburg Hornets while you were growing up?
Yeah, so I'm actually the first. I grew up going to Coach Scott's camps as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm actually his first player he's had that went to his camps, his kid camps. So it was pretty cool to, I guess, be a part of that. So I've known Coach, and he's in my family for my whole life probably. So it's just been a good opportunity to grow from someone that I've known, and someone just such a great guy. He's a great coach on the court, but off the court he's just so personable and really builds a great relationship with his players.
So if you're his first player that he coached in a camp, that means he's getting a little old, but also he's getting up in the record book. He's approaching Wayne Profit's all-time coaching record here at Lynchburg. You touched on it a little bit, but I'd like you to elaborate on what's it like playing for Coach Scott, who was an All-American during his playing days.
Yeah, it's been an honor, honestly. He's a player that I've talked to because he was pretty similar to me, similar size, position, same conference. And just, obviously, like you stated, he was an All-American, so just kind of learning from what he did on the court and what he's seen in his experience as coach in all levels, from Penn State, high D1 to the ODAC, we like to say the best conference in D3.
Mm-hmm.
So just learning from him what he did off the court and on the court, and how he was able to score the ball as much as he did.
And then, why did you choose Lynchburg in the first place? If the answer is just purely because it's local, well, just kind of elaborate a little bit more on what attracted you to Lynchburg.
My recruitment process was a little different than others because of COVID and injuries. I wasn't able to play for 2 straight years because I had double ankle surgery. So at the time, as a sophomore, I was kind of just looking D1s, scholarships. And then by the time my senior year came around, a lot of the opportunities that I had were kind of gone because they haven't seen me play in so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Coach came to one of our practices and just catching up with me, and I was like, there's not too much I got right now. Only other D3 I'm talking to is Swarthmore, and I ended up not even getting into the school. So by then, I started talking to just Lynchburg and CNU, and I kind of, at that point in my recruitment, I knew what Lynchburg was about, and I knew Coach Scott super well, and I knew I could succeed here. So it was kind of perfect from the start of my senior year.
Well, we're really happy that you're here playing for the Hornets. That's really all that we got for you here now, Pearson. Thanks a lot for coming in and sitting down with us.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Give me a Go Hornets.
Go Hornets.